video here.
go to market, with everything possible, and it was just full of people. Uh,
Yeah.
yeah, it was full of people.
Yeah, I will. No, later.
So we just
Chill, let's start recording. But
yeah,
I will,
yeah.
I will put it out.
Just talk what we come, and then
Abba.
you start where you want. No, it was really good. So community focused roundtable. People had all kinds of perspective of how to use community in fundraising, go to market, building product. Yeah.
That's so awesome, man.
Yeah.
But so just like it was like a general roundtable where everybody could come and
Yeah,
say
I set the topic and I hosted the conversation.
Yeah.
But the point is, of course, of just everybody go one by one. What's their problem or how they want to relate to community, and then you tap into everybody's ideas, and it just becomes like a big
so it's like a discussion.
mind melt. Yeah.
How many people?
That was like 10 or 12 or something like that. Yeah.
It's amazing, man. Mostly internationals, or?
Yeah, everybody was from a different place. That's good.
Nice. But yeah, so in today's episode, let's discuss. Well, we can start with the Slush. So we met here, and we can talk a little bit about that, and then I will do like a little introduction how we met, and then you can say about your solution. And then I'll have some questions regarding, like, typically I have about like the founder story, how did you start, what's the vision, where are you going, the team, things like that. So yeah, very casual conversation. So
perfect.
Yeah,
that's how I
and
like
this is the first time I'm doing a video podcast too. So
okay. Nice.
Yeah, let's do it.
Yeah.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for tuning in. We are at Slush 2024 here with my new friend Markus from Finland, but lives in the US. And yeah, we're enjoying every single moment of it. To be honest, I'm mind blown from the experience. Love it. I met so many great people throughout those 2 days and the day before on the side events. Amazing. Yeah. How has been your experience at Slush?
Yeah, thanks for asking. It's been really fun. It's always this kind of getting towards the end of the year. Everybody gathers in this massive big techno cave of thousands of people around startups, and made a lot of great connections here.
That's amazing. So we were just talking before recording about the roundtable that you hosted. So what was that about?
Yeah, that was I hosted the roundtable around community focus, like how can you lean into community with product development, with go to market, even with fundraising. And it was like 10, 12 different startups with everybody different angle of how they're thinking about community, and it was just this big kind of mind melt around solving people's problems, and I think everybody got some kind of new idea or angle to walk away with, so that was really fun.
Did you get any new ideas?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, just to hear how people connect things or what kind of communities they're building, it's just really inspiring, and especially like the community as an angle, you really get to tap into what people are passionate about, and people want to lean in and they want to be part of it, and you just have to allow it and facilitate it in a way that it can really sustain.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, 100% agree. I always I think that's the biggest value of going to this tech I mean, you can argue there a lot more, but to me, that's the biggest value, that you get to connect with people that you don't even know about them, and you start all these discussions and share about your experiences and connect on a different level, which that probably the next day, like, you will never see that guy again, but you still connect, and it's like I think these kinds of conferences really have this kind of power that can bring people together and tap into the unknown. Discover.
Can give you a new perspective.
Yeah, totally. But yeah, thank you very much for coming to the show. It's pleasure. Very interesting to have you. Tell us a bit about yourself. You have a very interesting startup that you're working on. So let's get listeners up to speed, and tell us about you. Like, who are you, what you do?
Yeah, I'm co-founder and CEO of Olo. It's in consumer health and wellness. We are using immersive sounds from high biodiversity places to regulate the nervous system. So
Wow.
reducing stress, anxiety, attention fatigue, but also tap into the more high cognition of like creativity, focus, and flow states. My co-founder is
Wow.
somatic therapist and mental health professional, and we met 10 years ago with the passion of changing the inner nature and inner states of people.
Wow. And you're based in San Francisco, right?
Yes, I'm originally from Finland. I lived in Berlin, Copenhagen a long time, and now I've been
Wow.
in San Francisco 1.5 years. And this is like we already built something with my co-founder, a retreat center in Finland, and did some B2B type of business, and then spin off from that. We thought, okay, this could be a lot
Yeah.
bigger. Let's make it a startup and go to the valley.
Amazing. Yeah, there's definitely a lot to uncover. So we're gonna have a very interesting conversation. But let's start from the beginning. Why did you start working on this solution? How did the idea come?
So I was originally a composer, musician, and sound designer. I basically lived from music and sound since I was 16, and I used to do 100 concerts a year, travel all the time, and that's stressful, man. Like
Yeah.
when you're just seeing a airport, venue, a
Yeah.
hotel, and you just like repeat that a few times, you get a feeling like, oh, this is physically hard and mentally hard.
Yeah.
And I started to look of health and wellness, and I think this was like, I don't the term biohacking was really not coined then, but it was like starting to come out with those kind of things. And I just tried to get my hands on everything from yoga, meditation, neurolinguistic programming, supplements. Like, what could I just like? How can I hack my biology and mental state? Like, how can I keep it together, basically,
Yeah.
with this kind of high pressure, stressful environment? And I found some things, but I felt like there's also some things missing. And then in 2014, I was playing in the Royal Albert Hall in London, and I had been just 5 years constantly touring and doing projects, and I felt kind of empty afterwards. And
Yeah.
I asked myself, like, what's going on? I don't know if I want to be in doing this at least this way anymore. And it was just this kind of personal crisis, like, oh shit, my identity is wrapped around this thing, and now what? And then it started to come together, like, okay, health and sound. There's so much research around the impact of music and sound in our brain and our nervous system. What could we do here? And I was looking at the existing wellness content that was kind of new agey, and some of it was kind of static and flat with just like rain or somebody, a voice actor reading a script, how to breathe or things like that. And I thought, like, there could be much more done here. Like, what if there would be a like a Pixar quality production level? Like, what if it be really immersive and spatial audio and it really take you in a journey? What would happen? And then I met my co-founder, and we straight away went with hosting some workshops. We traveled around some nature places and eventually went to more like look for high biodiversity and really exotic places. But in start, just like, let's capture some nature with high quality microphones in 3D, compose some music, also capture it in 3D, put sound design it together into a sound journey. We had the special speaker system that also propagates the sound 360. Let's host a workshop where people lie down, have the experience. Katarina was doing some kind of somatic awareness exercise that really helped people to tune in, and then just host like a circle afterwards, like, how was your experience? How are you feeling now? And the feedback was incredible. It became this kind of contemporary campfire moment of like, we experienced something together. We tell stories about, people talked about their maybe childhood memories that they haven't thought about for a long time, or their imagination went somewhere, or the body sensations and things like that. And that became really fascination. And then we got a grant to do a research project around that. Like, let's really look at this. And then that had led us to first just monetize the content and workshops, and then use that revenue to bootstrap an app, get it to market, have paying users. We took some angel checks, but we didn't really need to raise much funding because we could just
Really?
build from the revenue standpoint. And it's been a journey of building community, going to US as a European, and a lot about just leaning into unknown,
Yeah.
like you were saying in the beginning. Like it's a lot about just daring
Yeah.
to go out there and just also accept the pain of growing and learning stuff. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. Tell me about that. How? Because I know that in Finland, work-life balance
Mm-hmm.
is such a big thing, and in US, not so
Yeah.
much. How is it for you as Finnish to live in such a hectic
I have kind
work
of mixed
environment?
feelings about it, and maybe some people are not gonna agree with me, but I've never, I never had a job, so I never worked for someone else. I've only done things that I want to do, and I'm lucky to have lived my 20s from music and now trying to build a startup around that. So I work a lot. Like I really do. And for me, it's not about trying to have the weekend off always. It's more about taking moments inside my day. Like it's about enjoying,
Yeah.
enjoying what we're doing. Like if there's a moment, sometimes just like not to be stuck in your head and just grinding forward fast, but like inside everything, there's a way to do it where you just connect it to your body. You allow yourself to feel things, and if something great happens, to enjoy it. And of course, we need time off, but I think, and there's many opinions about it, but I think if you do something that you love and you feel like you're driven by the passion of that, you don't burn out in the same way if you would be grinding on something that feels like, I don't know why I'm doing this.
Absolutely.
So I actually, maybe there's some kind of mix of the work-life balance, or the Scandinavian or Nordic way and American way, because I also love the American, we can do it, let's get out there and what
Yeah.
it takes, like let's now like make it happen. So
Let's crush those goals.
yeah, yeah, I also love that. So I think that's why we Europeans sometimes like to go there, to the
Yeah.
land of opportunity, to really.
This powered off Europeans
Yeah,
going to
yeah,
America. Yeah.
yeah.
No, that makes sense a lot. But you mentioned like throughout your 20s you were mostly like doing music and now building your startup. How much? First of all, how was this transition
Hmm.
of like from? I imagine it's very different
Yeah.
from making music, being much more creative, and now I imagine you have to be more data driven and more calculated, I guess, in your daily life. And how much do you go back to music in your free time?
Yeah, so I do get to work with music because I still produce the sound journeys that are part of our app and experiences. So I get to tap into that, and I do recognize that there's a limitation of how much I can scale that as a CEO and how much we need to like build that team in house. Um, but in terms of thinking things more analytically, I actually was always quite analytical because I felt like music was a way for me to use mathematics. It was a way for me to tap into a lot of things and just to get something like when I was working with music, I was also the producer, I was the band leader, I was paying people salaries, I had to start a company in order to be able to do all that. So it felt like it was some kind of like version of a startup already. I just early on somehow I didn't have somebody who told me like how business should be done, or some kind of person in the family or somebody who would tell me about startups. So quite late I realized that you could be a founder of a startup, and then I was like, hey, but this is what I've been always kind of doing. I just didn't think about it that way. But then of course there's a huge amount of learning, of getting into the scene, learning the lingo, understanding how things are talked about, and how they're structured, and trying to learn to build an organization continues to be like one of the biggest skills to learn.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah.
And that brings me to my next question. What were the biggest challenges for you in this process? Because, as you said, well, you did pick up some angel money here and there, but mostly you were either bootstrapped or the
Hmm.
revenue-led growth. So what were the challenges in that sense?
But I think it's just like not knowing what you don't know to start with. So I think it was challenging, like the amount of new things per day.
Yeah.
or per hour that yet you have to deal with, and just being able to cultivate a mindset even stronger of saying like there's gonna be a lot of um, learning here, and I really need to maintain my mindset. Like if you kind of think about that, can be actually your foundation as a founder of like, how do I regulate my inner life, or how do I manage my psychology? Because if that breaks, then kind of everything breaks.
Totally.
And to be able to be just everyday positive and curious and willing to feel the pain when it's painful and not let it stop you, but just like allow it to pass, like that was hard, you know.
Yeah,
But,
yeah,
and then I think building your network, obviously,
yeah.
like going to US, have close to zero network, and just start meeting people, hosting events. And there's this kind of two ways. Sometimes you go out there, which is kind of more push action. I guess you get out there, you try to make connections, you try to reach out. And then there's the other side, which is like pull or magnetism. Like I'm hosting an event, I'm putting a stake in the ground, like this is what I care about and this is what I have to offer, and people come to you and you are the house, and you kind of create the space for the experience. And that has been really powerful for us, because then we realize like, whoa, there's a lot of people passionate about what we care,
Yeah.
and they want to help us, they want to be part of this. And I think that's what started to be like a realization, like, whoa, we can just build this, we can just go to a new country and we can just make it happen.
Yeah, it's very powerful actually. Very powerful. But so in the startup world, we see this very commonly that founders have some idea, they start their company, and it could be they pivot 50%,
Mm.
100%. How was that for you? How much the prototype you have now and the product you have now matches your first vision, and how has it changed and changed you too?
Hmm. So there's a lot of steps here, and I'm trying to kind of break it down in a useful narrative. I think the very first versions of the sounds, there's already a hint of like, okay, this could work. Like, I think we had something that is still unchanged, which is the experience of listening to a quality nature sound and music that is weaved together in a way that it feels like you are somewhere. And it somehow is just so trippy. Or
Yeah.
it's like there's something about it that could get your mind on a journey, gets you wondering. And then, so we had this kind of core thing. And then it started to be like, how do we deliver it? What's the context that we offer it in? Like everything around it started to be the learning curve. So first it was an event. Then we had to figure out like, okay, how do we make the event feel good? What the space needs to be? What are the right partners to do it with? What's the intention or like invitation? What is the copy of the marketing so people come with the right mindset? Like what's
Yeah.
the frame that you experience the thing in? And then like, okay, will people pay tickets for this? Is like, what about out of pocket? Is this like something that people want to invest in? We were holding retreats. That was also one of the first products, like 7-day retreat or a weekend retreat. And that's a completely different, there's a journey from a 7-day retreat to an app, you know.
Yeah.
um,
Yeah, you can't just force everybody.
yeah,
Yeah.
and then one moment was obviously during COVID. We realized like, okay, let's try to just host these experiences online, um, sell them to businesses. We realized that there's a lot of, during COVID, people with remote teams, people were losing the human feeling of getting to understand each other. And we were hosting a shared experience that made people, because all the Zoom meetings are kind of this mono audio, you kind of sonic claustrophobia. It's
Totally.
pretty bad. People get really, fatigue from that. And then suddenly you could have this sound experience that sounds like you are in a different space, and it was really refreshing. And people shared those experiences, and teams were like, "Oh wow! Like, I didn't get to hear anything about your troubles or background or something, but just what you said about how you experienced that, I kind of know you better now."
Yeah.
And then there was like this learning of, oh, this is this social emotional learning of shared experiences, like a campfire feeling. This is valuable, and we hadn't thought about it. First we just thought it's just get some user feedback, but it's like, oh, this is actually a feature that
Yeah.
people share the experience. Obviously then starting to build an app, first time for me to build a digital product, being the lead of that.
So you led the product.
Yeah, and that was
Wow.
really fun experience. Like I just started from a blank sheet of paper and pen, closed my eyes, like what do I wanted to experience? Because I felt like all the other apps were like a remote control with million buttons, and I was like, we don't want that. Like
No.
we shouldn't build health and wellness apps like bank apps or like social media apps. We should have a fundamentally different design philosophy.
Because
Um,
some apps, it feels like they cause another mental health problem. They have so many buttons.
yeah, you're just scrolling content, and
Yeah.
it's become like when now you're having experience. And we just, even first we thought like, should we just have like a black app, which is audio only app?
Mm.
You basically don't have any visual at all. And then we thought, okay, if we have to have something visual, what's the most minimal functional visual that already gives you a feeling? So the screen is a kind of an entryway into the audio experience. But there's, of course, there was iterations, a lot of things there where I thought we could do so much, and then I had to really learn like how do I minimize, like break down the vision into smaller steps. I think that was like a big learning, and still continues to be, because you just want to create a high quality experience, and you want to be there already, and you have to like pare it down. Like no, but this is the core of the product, and how do we start to expand? So we actually, our first version of the app was more complex than it is till today,
Mm.
and we kind of shaved off everything unnecessary from it and tried to like, what's the fastest time to value
Yeah.
we can provide for
Wow.
users. Yeah.
And these iterations came from the user experience that you had, or your personal experience?
User experience, hearing what people had to say, also some kind of personal intuition of just like being a user of it
Yeah.
myself. First I thought I couldn't be, and then my co-founder Karen just said like, why don't you just listen it like everybody else? Like why don't you just try to, if you're stressed out, like try it and see if it helps. And to my great surprise, I could just be like everyone else, and I could just use it. And then it was an unlock for me, because I became just a regular user, and I was just like, whenever I felt like stressed out or had hard time falling asleep, or I needed to do some deep work and get into the zone, I was just like, okay, let me put this to the test. Like, will it be able to help me? And it really could. And then that helps to look at the product from a different perspective when you're really an active user
Yeah.
of it.
Amazing. Yeah. What I see from your story is that your growth, throughout your growth period, the app growth, you had you had to create this sort of like different types of perception based on the products you were offering. I'm just curious, did your background in music help you to, because like creating perception is all about like branding and how do you present your product or your company to the potential customers, which I consider, and obviously everybody considers, to be more artistic
Mm-hmm.
part of building a startup or a business rather than more more mathematical or calculated. So did your musician experience help you feel your potential customers better in terms of like what kind of copy you should write, what types of colors you should choose, and all that?
Yeah, there's probably parts of it that was useful. I had done some visual art before too, so I was pretty design oriented, and I think that was really clear to me when we started to design the app. And we had a designer, we had developers, and I was really hands on, and I was like, oh, actually I know exactly what I would want to have. So it was very instantaneous. And again, I didn't know how it's supposed to be done, but we just had this design sessions, and with the designer we could just do it on the spot. Like he was very good at the handcraft of design. So instead of like he sent me something, because later on I learned sometimes it's like you send something and then you look at it and send an email back, what about this? And no, we were just sitting as like we have 1 hour session or 90-minute 2 hour session. Let's just do it on the spot, and we would just like design it ready in those 2 hours. So we didn't like try to have maybe the proper process of it, but we got quite fast there, and it was really live. And I think that's an element that I took from producing music in a studio, that is like it happens now. Like let's not talk about making it, let's just make it together on the spot. And I think that was a way to like accelerate the process.
That's a very musician type of like jamming, I love going to like live jazz, sessions where people are just like, they don't even know each other, they're on the stage just jamming. So I feel it's
and maybe that's like a superpower or speciality that I had built for a decade, that it was just like, how great quality can you make, or how can you, it's not even the quality, it's more like, can I just really follow my intuition, curiosity, and have that intensity of the moment of like, let's get there now.
Absolutely. That also implies to startup mindset too. Totally. And how about the future? So what's the future vision of your app? Where is it going?
On the app side, I mean, Olo is more than an app, because it's a community with live events. There's those locations and things, but focusing on the app, I think the most exciting thing for me is like, what is the best audio experience you can have in an app, and how can it help you to understand yourself? And what I mean by audio, it's those sound journey experiences, but it's also voice with AI. It's also about this interaction. So for me, when we talked about user experience and remote control with 1,000 buttons, for me the interesting is like, how can it feel generative in a way? Like, how could the app understand you where you at as much as you can be? And we had this clinical study showing that Olo can really reduce anxiety by 60%, improve creativity, improve heart rate variability, which is this nervous system resilience indicator. So then it opens up a possibility to connect to wearables. So we had already users sending a screenshot of their Oura Ring score or Apple Watch score. Like, I was stressed out, and then I had an Olo session, and in 10-15 minutes it went to recovery. And that's really inspiring for the user of like, I feel better and I have data to show it. And that opens up a possibility not only to improve the retention, or that the users see the effectiveness, but also starting to integrate that data into giving insights, or even then personalize the experience. Another thing that we just launched yesterday was we have a beta version of an AI somatic coach. So this is large language model based thing where we trained or fine-tune a model based on Katarina's one-on-one session transcripts that help us to have her 20-year knowledge, and she worked with 10,000 sessions one-on-one. So that wealth of knowledge into this somatic perspective, and somatic means the felt sense of the body, learning the language of your nervous system, being able to actually listen to your body and make choices from a place of what's right for me. And like our body and psychology is very connected, and often you can actually discover a lot of mental unlocks through your body sensations. So the AI coach in the app will not give you advice how to live or what to do, but it asks you better and better questions, helps you to ask questions from yourself of like, how am I feeling? What does it mean? How does it connect to the things that I may be struggling with? Or could it be inspirationally for me? And this kind of self-reflection, I think AI can be a great mirror that can actually help us to understand ourselves better, and it's on demand, always available, infinitely patient. So yeah.
Yeah, totally. It's a great replacement for, let's say, training thousands of
Yes,
those agents.
but we still want to keep the human aspect of it. And the other thing we launched is Olo Foundations, which is this idea that we want to set you up for success in your path. And sometimes the beginning is the hardest. And when we did this kind of premium onboarding in the very early stage of the company, where we had these small cohorts of just a call together of just asking, like, what are the things that you would like to improve in your life, or what are the challenges? What is the skills or experiences you could have that could help on that? And it was kind of a light bulb moment for people, like, oh, actually, yeah, that's how I could really work on this. This is how I'm going to use Olo in my daily life. And from that we learned, like, let's actually again make Katarina's experience available. So there's going to be a 4-week course with 4 sessions, live cohorts, where it's kind of community driven learning about your nervous system combined with the Olo app subscription. Then we made our own eye mask also, which is like a really quality one. We tried different ones and we felt like we have to do our own. That's been very popular. And that combination of the live cohorts, having the Olo app always, the AI coach, and then the eye mask kind of improving the experience, we felt like now we have a bundle of experiences or product and service there that actually delivers the ultimate experience, which is now the flagship offer.
Wow, that's amazing. Walk us through the process of recording sounds.
Oh, that's fun. Yeah.
Yeah, you told me yesterday you traveled to a lot of places for that, and curious.
Yeah, so we've recorded over 1,000 hours in these different places. There's so many stories to tell, but maybe one interesting, just before COVID, we were recording in São Tomé and Príncipe, the second smallest African country in 0 longitude, 0 latitude. And there's 40% endemic species and plants there, but only one deadly animal, which is a snake, so fairly safe to go into the jungle alone. And I estimated that I could do it. So we were there, both Katarina and I did most of the recordings in the evening and morning. So when the twilight, when the light happens, that's when the soundscapes change. And I still remember the first time I was in the jungle, the first evening, and it starts to get dark, and you're there just alone inside. The sounds are changing, and there was like really big size bats flying around you, and some monkey drops a coconut behind you, and there's like these moments that are kind of surprising and makes your imagination go wild, because it's getting darker and it's your senses get so sharp. So that experience was just very exciting. And then Katarina's waiting in the car. I said I would be coming back at, I don't know, 7 o'clock or something like that. And I was a bit late, and she was thinking like, oh man, now he's gone. Like, what happened? But yeah, so those experiences, you cannot ever like control what's gonna happen, if it's gonna rain, what's gonna be the weather like. You just have to go out there and be curious and really open-minded. And sometimes when you spend a long time in nature like that, you kind of starts to dissolve into the environment, and you kind of lose the sense of maybe yourself, and you just experiencing the environment. There's also moments like I was coming out of the jungle another day, and somebody's singing. There was a field before the village on a valley, and somebody was singing, echoing in the valley, and it's totally magical experience. I got to capture that. They allowed me to get closer and record, and that became also one of the pieces of content. And it's like you cannot predict, or you cannot like decide, but sometimes you're just so lucky to be there.
Yeah, totally, 100%. How many days typically those trips take?
this was like almost a 1 month trip where there was like a good 2 plus almost 3 weeks of recording in different areas of the jungle, of the um, different parts of, there's some rivers and shore. So it's not always that long, but if you go to some exotic place, it's kind of nice to spend a bit of time there to really capture stuff. Um, Sometimes it's just a moment and you realize like, oh wow, now this interesting weather phenomena or something, like you just get out there and capture it. So you kind of it's good to be always ready. Always have a microphone with you. um, but now as we're bucket list is getting more and more ambitious, where we would want to record, of course you want to plan more and think about safety and things like that, because sometimes the place can be more crazy.
Of course, yeah. And how does it feel to, go from this peace and almost being one of those jungle residents to going to, hustle and bustle of San Francisco?
It's intense. It's really intense. Like I've had moments where we were in somewhere in the nature and then we go to New York and it's just like it's so noisy and it's so intense, and it takes a bit to adjust. And sometimes I think like, oh, we're sacrificing this comfort to go into the city, to jump into the insanity to build this, but somehow it's really rewarding to, we used to with the retreats bring people to nature, and now we're bringing nature to people into the cities. And I still love cities too, like it's fun, it's another soundscape, and everything's like interesting in a way. It's just like it's good to be able to have the switch that you're not in New York every day 24/7.
Of course, yeah, it can be devastating.
Yeah.
But yeah, thank you very much. I think it was a very interesting session. Yeah, you have very unique profile in a sense, coming from the music background and still implying everything you have learned throughout the decades, or basically your whole life, I imagine, and now building a startup out of your learning. My final question would be, what would be your advice to every person that that has dedicated their life to something specific, like music in your case, and have an idea to start their own startup? How should they approach this process to get started?
Oh, well, that's a really good question. I think the hardest thing about startups is that there's no general path that you can just go and say like, I just follow this formula and it's gonna get there. And I think like having the courage to pave your own path, that it's gonna be unique. I mean, obviously you can take a lot of learnings from other. You don't need to reinvent the wheel in every corner. There's a lot that you can take from others that have come before you, but there's always some aspect at least that is completely totally unique just to you, and you have to be able to treasure it and protect it and think about, how do I build this part at least of the company from a standpoint of what I believe to be right and how it should be done. Because every company that has the potential to be successful has a uniqueness, and to be able to be true to that uniqueness, I think it's crucial. And obviously like finding a way then to build something around that uniqueness where you feel like that you are able to do it for years, 5 years, maybe 10 years. So you need to choose a way to do it that you feel like you'll have the fuel for the marathon. So getting then the right other people who can support the parts that are not your parts. Like how can you double down on your strengths and hire for your weaknesses, I guess.
Absolutely, yeah. This last part was very inspiring. But yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure.
It's been a pleasure for me too. I want to wish you best of luck. Looking forward to meeting you next year at Slush.
Yes.
And asking you about the progress. Yeah, thank you very much for listening. See you next time.
Yeah, this was fun.
Yeah, we did it. Woo. I've never recorded podcast like this, you know.
Oh, yeah.
It's always like a Zoom for me.
Oh yeah. How was it?
It was very, very interesting, really, and I liked the storyline that we followed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it went quite natural, right?
Yeah, yeah. It felt like I didn't even have any questions
Mm-hmm.
scheduled, and to be honest, all of the questions I came up with,
Mm-hmm.
like I didn't even know what question I was asking before asking. It was just very nature.
Yeah.
Did you like the storyline?
Yeah, I think it was really nice flow, and everything that you asked was